I just went out on the streets in Hong Kong with my DJI RS2 gimbal and my Sony a7S III camera to test out the capabilities of this brand new 90mm lens from TTArtisan.
I'm gonna have to use ND filters, ND at night, because this is an f1.2 lens. So this is a Kenko magnetic ND, then this goes on here like that. 3, 2, 1, go.
This is an all-manual lens, and it won't work with focus gears because the focus ring is too tight. So I just tried to keep the same distance from Jazzy, my subject, as we walked.
Really hard to keep framing and focus with this lens. Trying to shoot an actual moving subject, not easy at all. No autofocus. It's okay though, I'll get it. Go.
When you're shooting at 90mm, every little movement of the lens is amplified.
I messed it up.
Usually, how many takes does it get you before you get the take that you really want?
I'd say about 5 takes usually.
5 takes, okay.
Usually takes me about 5 takes, yeah.
After several tries, I finally got a take that I was happy with. Even though this lens is difficult to use, it has a really unique look because of that long focal length and the really wide aperture. The subject pops out from the background in a really vibrant way. By lowering the gimbal and filming from a distance, I was able to get wide shots with lots of layers of depth, a totally different look than the usual wide-angle lens type of gimbal shot. I found it nearly impossible to do a good leading shot in front of my actor. It was just really hard to keep him framed while walking in front of him.
This lens is probably the most difficult lens I've ever tried to shoot with. It's big, it's heavy, so I get tired with the gimbal. The depth of field is so shallow, more shallow than any lens I've ever used.
For a real challenge, I attempted to do an orbit around Jazzy as he stood in the crosswalk. My big problem here is that the gimbal kept jerking to the side no matter what settings I used. It just wasn't panning smoothly enough. So I had to post-stabilize it to smooth things out.
Woo! That's a heavy lens.
Of course, it's way easier to do static shots with the 90mm. This lens was obviously designed for portraits, and for that purpose, I think it looks great. I also found it much easier to do shots where I didn't have to walk with the gimbal. I just moved my body a bit instead. Because of that long focal length, there's plenty of motion even with just a little body movement.
The camera is just coming loose because this lens is so heavy. I have to keep that tight because this lens is too heavy. I should be using a lens support, but I didn't bring it, so I guess that's my fault.
The final test was to shoot in some really dark streets and pull out detail from those shadows. I tried different ISOs here. I tried my base ISO of 640, exposed normally. And I also tried my higher base ISO of 12,800, exposed 2 stops over, and then pulled back in post.
Action.
Either of these ISOs will work, but I recommend using 640 to preserve more highlights and 12,800 to keep more shadows. So I'm tired. This lens definitely gave me a workout, and it was fun to shoot with, but I don't know how practical this would be for most real-world scenarios because it's just a big, heavy lens that requires a lot of care to get a good shot. But it was fun to try out, and if you're considering a portrait lens for your photography or your video,
then the TTArtisan 90mm might be the one for you.
Did you buy a gimbal, but now it's sitting around collecting dust on the shelf because you're not getting the shots that you want? Well, it's not your fault. Now with gimbals, you're able to achieve shots that used to take an entire Hollywood crew. Gimbals are extremely powerful tools, but you need to know a few secrets in order to get the most out of them. I've been a gimbal user since the first generation of single-arm gimbals came out way back in 2014. What I'm going to teach you are some techniques that you're not going to find in the user manual, and you're not going to find them on YouTube. This is an encyclopedia of gimbal moves with detailed instructions on how to do each one, with visual examples both in a classroom type setting and out in the real world on a crowded, busy street with lots of obstacles that you have to avoid. And you can draw from it for your own inspiration every time you go out and shoot. You could improve your gimbal skills in 24 hours. The Gimbal Masterclass is open. Click on the link and join me today.